Hello, good afternoon. Welcome to St. James Cathedral. I'm Robbie Ellis and I'm hosting this pre-concert talk to our Rush Hour concert. We'll be hearing three members of Ars Musica Chicago. I've got two of them on the stage with me. Jason Moy, Artistic Director and Harpsichordist, and Kiyoe Matsuura, who has her Baroque violin. So this concert is called The Grand Tour. We'll find out why shortly, but first, Jason, let's hear a little bit about Ars Musica Chicago. What's the organization? Who's the membership? All of that.
Well, Robbie, thank you so much for that warm welcome, and thank you to the International Music Foundation for inviting us to be part of this exciting evening, the Grand Tour. So Ars Musica Chicago is actually an organization that dates back to the early 80s, I believe 1984. Started as the American Medieval Players and sort of morphed into an early music performance and advocacy organization. I was lucky enough to become the artistic director in 2017, have been working hard to sort of to create exciting programs, performance season, and educational outreach events. I was born and raised here in Chicago, public school student, and we've already, through the help of Early Music America and other generous supporters, been able to bring a lot of early music programming into the public schools.
Wonderful. This concert is called A Grand Tour, a journey through Baroque Europe, and four composers from four different countries. Every time I've hosted one of these concerts this season so far, I've begun the concert with, I'd like to acknowledge the presence of so-and-so composer whose work will be played on the concert tonight. All of the composers today have been dead for 250 years, but they're quite...
As far as we know, yes.
As far as we know. Well, they're here in spirit. Hello. So we've got a composer from Salzburg, we've got a composer from Novara, which is in northern Italy, one from Paris, and one who was working in London, not from London. But, and all four of these works are sonatas. Now, what on earth does a sonata mean in the Baroque period?
Well, it's really interesting because the point you bring up, that the Rush Hour concerts have always been a champion of new music. In some ways, new music is just music that people haven't heard before. And I think these composers, Isabella, Leonarda, Boismortier, their music, of course, has been around for hundreds and hundreds of years, but they're still new to the majority of our audiences, and that's really what we're really happy to be able to shed some light on that. But this idea of the Baroque sonata as a term, we think of sonatas today in terms of Beethoven and Mozart. It really was a generic catch-all for any sort of instrumental music. It took its root from the Italian for to sound, as opposed to the cantatas, which were for singing, for voice, with text, and toccatas for the keyboard, which were touched on the keys. So it really wasn't until January 1st, 1700, an Italian by the name of Arcangelo Corelli published his Opus 5 violin sonatas and changed the course of musical history forever by codifying the sonata form. In his case, it was 4 or 5 movement, slow, fast, slow, which you hear in the Boismortier and the Handel sonatas. The sonatas of Leonarda and Biber that we hear in the first half of the program were part of this philosophy or movement called the Stilus Fantasticus, the fantastical style.
There's certainly some fantastical stuff in the first piece by Heinrich Ignaz von Biber, and Kiyoe, you've been kind enough to bring your violin to this pre-concert talk. Would you talk briefly about the sounds that we're going to hear in the Sonata Representativa? So they represent different things.
Right. So this is just one of Biber's most famous works. If we have time, I'd love to talk about the possible misattribution, but It was known in its day as the bird song sonata, and birds do feature prominently. But right, we hear, and Kiyoe, in working on this piece with me several years ago for a concert, she studiously listened to all the bird songs on YouTube just to really get it. So, Kiyoe, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so it's a real barnyard type of piece, so you're going to hear some interesting sounds. It's okay to laugh. They're not meant to be pretty. So yeah, if you hear some uglier, crunchy sounds, they're meant to be that way.
Do you want to demonstrate? It's up to you. You can start, and I'll try to identify the animal. Yeah, that's the... Go ahead, Robbie.
Oh, I don't know. I thought we were going to play Name That Tune. It's more, I don't know, more Morton Feldman than Baroque, I think.
Right. I mean, you were talking about new music, right?
Yeah. What was that?
That was the frog, the riveting of the frog. So in context, you'll sort of hear in that section, and then we have. Right. Yes, ding, ding, ding. Someone said it. You win a prize, whatever that is. That was the cat.
Oh, it's the cat, yep.
What else do we have? And that was the quail. So it's really interesting that all of these animal sounds actually came from, they were written down by a sort of German polymath musician, mathematician by the name of Kircher. And he was really kind of the founder, or he codified the Stilus Fantasticus, and he wrote down, he's like, the quail sounds like that.
So it's kind of almost like Bela Bartok going into the countryside and transcribing Hungarian folk songs. No, this Kircher's going into the countryside and listening very intently.
Absolutely, and actually if you put them sort of side by side, they are note by note, rhythm by rhythm, exact transcriptions of what Kircher put in his in one of his many, many writings.
Let's turn now to the music of Isabella Leonarda. She was from a wealthy merchant family in the northern Italian city of Novara and entered a nunnery, entered a convent, age 16, which, I mean, back in the day, entering a convent was kind of the best way for women to be productive in work, I guess.
Right, so in 17th century Italy, any woman composer who had a chance of having her music published was a nun. So the convents at that time were known for their excellence in music. We don't know a lot about Isabella Leonarda, other than she probably came from a wealthy family, and she was probably very intelligent and ambitious. She quickly rose to the position of Mother Superior, and having this high position in the convent gave her a little bit of extra time to spend time composing music. Her music always carried two dedications. The first was always to the Virgin Mary, and then the second was always to a highly regarded person, probably a sponsor of the convent. And this particular piece that we're going to hear is her 12th sonata for violin, and it kind of alternates between these fantastical rhapsodic movements and then more strict rhythmic passages. My interpretation of that is kind of a alteration between the awe and reverence of the Catholic Church versus the toil and labor of daily life in the convent.
And that sort of Italian style of free-form recitative, and then going into, think of it as in terms of an opera, like you've got the recitative that leads up to the aria in a lot of ways. So Isabella Leonarda was a nun. Ignaz von Biber was in the employ of the Archbishop of Salzburg. But the other two composers on the program, they were businessmen.
Yes, and extremely successful and wealthy ones too. So Boismortier was a really interesting character. He was one of the very first composers or musicians in Baroque France to not have a wealthy patron. He ended up actually obtaining a royal privilege to publish his own music.
Well, the kind of patronage, I mean, he may not have a patron, but he's got the king smiling down on him, so he's...
Right.
lucky
well,
in that sense.
Exactly, but every dollar he made selling his music went into his pocket and not, some nobleman or noblewoman.
Yeah, and so the last two composers on the program, Boismortier. Good thing I'm not on the radio right now. Boismortier and Handel, both non-Italians, but writing in a very Italian style in the late Baroque.
Absolutely, right. There was this sort of conflict between the Italian and French styles for much of the early Baroque period. The Italians, with their virtuosity and tunefulness, won out, and France was one of the last holdouts. But by the time Boismortier was writing, the music had definitely adopted an Italian style, primarily to sell music, right? People wanted this, and they, wrote music that the people wanted to buy. And Handel too. I mean, he was native German, born same year as Bach, but in his late teens, he moved to Rome, where he met Corelli, and they played together, and he adopted the Italian style there, which he brought with him to England.
And he would, he wrote music for publication for people to play at home, and he always followed the trends of the times. So he'd write Italian opera for Covent Garden in London, and then, society's becoming a bit more pious, let's write some oratorios.
Right, I mean, everyone was going to the opera, not going to church, so, why not import the opera form to religious music? And he wrote some of the greatest oratorios ever written, I think. Saul and Solomon. Solomon is this grand work for a double choir and trumpets, drums, strings, and actually the second movement of our sonata today, he reused later in one of these choruses, talking about Solomon, live forever, the pious son of David, as a choral fugue. So it's really interesting, just, he recycled his music constantly, and I think thought about even these intimate chamber works sort of in an orchestral sound world.
Before we finish up here, Jason, you said something funny to me about the furniture on this stage. If you hand the mic to me, I'm wondering if you could do a little demonstration of the piece that you brought and why you brought it.
Robbie was like, did you bring that old-looking brown chair? And I said, yes, because one of my mentors, Cezal Haugzahn, the harpsichord player, whom Kiyoe knows well, he used to jokingly say that if you play the harpsichord, your chair should be at least as old as the music you play.
If not the instrument.
Correct.
This looks a bit more modern.
Yes, yeah. From England.
Yeah, so I'm sitting on a pretty modern piano stool and a fairly standard chair, but no, the harpsichordist has to match the decor.
It's the right height.
Yes. What's Ars Musica Chicago up to in the coming months?
We actually have a concert next Friday, August 6th, at St. Chrysostom's Church, just up the street. We have a program of actually all women composers. Kiyoe introduced me to the music of Isabella Leonarda, so I'm happy to be able to play this violin sonata with her today. We're performing it again, as well as one of her sacred works with Chicago-based soprano Hannah DePriest, and we have a whole bunch of other instrumental and vocal repertoire. So if you go on our Facebook page, you can find information about that, Ars Musica Chicago on Facebook.
Wonderful. I'll forward promote some other concerts from the International Music Foundation. Tomorrow's Dame Myra Hess Memorial Concert is from pianist Julia Hamosh. She's playing Clara Schumann, Frideric Chopin, and Maurice Ravel. That's live on WFMT at 12:15, also streaming on the web. No in-person audience for that just yet. And next week, right here in the Rush Hour concert series, we have the Contras Quartet, music by Javier Alvarez, Rhiannon Giddens of Silk Road Ensemble, and Antonin Dvorak. Pre-concert talk, 5:15 here, and then the concert at 5:45. Thank you so much, Jason and Kiyoe, for joining me for this pre-concert talk. We'll be taking a break until 5:45. Please give the two of them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Rush Hour concert in St. James Cathedral. I'm Robbie Ellis. This concert is presented by the International Music Foundation, which is grateful for support from the Claire, Rush Hour Concert's exclusive media sponsor, the National Endowment for the Arts, and the Illinois Arts Council. Please welcome today's performers to the stage: violinist Kiyoe Matsuura, cellist Cora Swenson Lee, and harpsichordist Jason Moy, the members of Ars Musica Chicago.
Thank you.